Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now we are joined by 10th Man, Neil, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning, good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, good to have you all. Welcome to the live show. Welcome to everybody in the live chat. Good to have you all. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere-edge horizon, formerly known as the curve of the Earth?
No evidence whatsoever. Like I said, the show wouldn't be on if there was.
That's correct.
Hey, Arwin.
Hello, guys.
Hello, good to have you. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
Now, no observation of it, no proof of it, but they say the Earth is turning when we know the sky is moving.
Well, any evidence of the distance to the sun?
None whatsoever.
In chat, they were talking a lot of stuff saying if you say you're triangulating and you're celestial navigating and you're using a sun, then you should know the distance.
Well, based on their own books from their celestial navigation understandings, they don't even have a distance to the sun when you're navigating with the celestial objects. So if they can't have it, why should we have it?
They threw the law of signs at you. They kept saying, go look up the law of signs.
They're using the same sextant we are.
Yeah, they throw out their distances when they're using the sextant, though, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
Yep.
There might be a clue in there for something, for sure, but they can't hold something against us when they themselves don't hold it for themselves. So that's a zero out.
Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
None whatsoever. They never,
How would they know it's molten anyway?
because they made it up themselves.
Exactly, Arwin. Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Gotta know what it is first.
Anybody know what gravity is?
What was it?
Anybody in Discord know what gravity is?
It's the conceptual bending of length, width, depth, and time.
Pretty good, not bad. As a result of the uneven distribution of mass, that's correct. You can't bend concepts though, can you? You can't dilate them, you can't bend them, you can't travel through them.
No, you
What's the
cannot.
observed phenomenon?
There isn't one. It's only in the maths. Merely a description.
Well, that ends that.
But any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics. Don't all go at once.
It'd be a lot cooler if they did.
Yeah, it would be a lot cooler if they did. That's Dazed and Confused, in case anybody didn't get the reference.
Repeat the question again, please.
Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
In order to have that, you have to have experimentation through the scientific method, and to do that, you got to be able to manipulate the independent variable, and those disciplines, you can't ever get to that point.
So check out the most recent Ball Busters over on Quantum Eraser YouTube channel. So in that particular show, we're making a start again, as we've done many times, on science and the scientific method. What is natural science? How does it apply? Where is it applicable? Where is it claimed to have been applied but not been? So that's where we were at when we left off, and we will continue in a fortnight's time on the next Ball Busters. So check it out. Be here or be sphere for Ball Busters. Any evidence you can acquire an elevation angle measurement from a curved baseline?
Well, that's impossible. No one on any side disagrees with that.
Yeah, for the audience's benefit, if you're ever wondering why it's so quiet at the moment, the current vibe, quiet, is as a result of the argument leaving our opponents, regardless of their position, globe or anti-flat Earth, needing to measure an angle off a flat plane before they move forward with any form of celestial navigation argumentation, because they will need that angle to move it to the centre of their presupposed spherical Earth that's violated by the angle measurement itself. So they've got to, if they want to phrase it this way, beg the question of a flat plane to get an angle, to then start assuming a sphere thereafter, as stated, violating the angle they take in the first place. It's an interesting time, and there's no rebuttal to it. They can't get past the angle acquisition. It's amusing to me when a few of them comment that in the comments. So they'll say, you can't get past the angle. No. You can't get past the angle. You'll need to get it from a flat plane. But there's no clever rebuttal. So with the Black Swan, there was a rebuttal that could have, at the very least, duped the less intelligent into thinking that it's a viable rebuttal, even though the rebuttal of refraction actually violates the geometric assertion in the first instance, i.e. it's a loss for the person asserting it. Now, the person asserting it may or may not know that, but that isn't the point. They're just trying to look for consensus in anybody who hears that argument. And it might work some of the time, until you need a geometric straight line tangent to a sphere edge to do any sort of claimed angle measurements when you're drawing a line that's not in existence to a point that doesn't exist. Then it becomes a problem. But obviously, initially, Black Swan rebuttal, refraction, seems reasonable to somebody who's a bit thick. Now, acquisition of two straight lines. How are you going to get around that with a curved surface? The answer, you're not.
Well, we've already documented that Al-Biruni had to measure the Earth flat to get the height of the mountain. And then when he went to the height of the mountain, he disregards that whole measurement. And then we had Zanuck come on and saying, well, yeah, you got to start with a flat plane. So, I mean, how many more admissions do we need from that side?
I mean, I don't need any. I'm not looking for them to agree with me. I couldn't care less. You know, I know what I know, and whether or not they disagree because they want the consensus to agree with them, therefore disagree with me, is kind of inconsequential. It's not an agree-disagree argument. I think it's refracted curvature that would typically be saying this. But it isn't actually an argument. Ipso facto, you will measure an angle from a flat plane to do this. That's not, well, you might if you think you're on a flat plane, or you could if you're on a sphere. It's you will, if you're going to perform celestial navigation, take an angle measurement from a flat baseline. That is what is done. Now, we can take what is done and assert flat Earth with it because that's what's needed. That is an argument. But ipso facto, celestial navigation is a flat Earth proposition and method.
Well, that was my whole point. When Zana came on and agreed, immediately saying, well, you can't unless you have a flat plane. It's, like you said, it's not an argument. It's ipso facto. It's the way it's done. And he admits to it, but he wants to say, okay, now after that, we're going to take some geometric considerations and say we live on a globe or so. I mean, this is what they've been doing since the beginning.
Yeah, when they said that they were taking elevation angle measurements to the moon and getting its distance, well, that distance doesn't work unless you insert an R value to the flat Earth elevation angle measurement you took in the first place. It's like the people who turned around after the fact on the flat Earth side and said it works equally well on a flat plane, you just get a different height measurement. Yeah, you do from that position until you move, then you'll get a different height, but that's besides the point. What you're actually doing in both instances is measuring an elevation angle. That's two straight lines off a flat baseline. It's a triangle meeting at the point that the moon is above on the land. Well, that angle can only be taken if the baseline is straight. You don't get elevation angles if the curve is part of the equation. It can't have a curve. It's got to be flat. Any evidence that you can have gas pressure without a container? For all those fundies who think the outer space vibe is real, you know, that the sky is a vacuum?
You'd have to escape the container in order to be able to prove that. But if you did, you wouldn't survive in order to be able to prove that, if you could.
Okay. So you're conceding a container?
There's literally no way physically possible to do that. Pretty much no matter what.
Yeah, but you missed you're conceding a container. There's a few flat earthers out there that would say, well, beyond the container, there might be a space. You're like, right, but as soon as we get to containment, yeah, that debunks every assertion of a sky vacuum, because there is no container between us and the heliocentric claim that the sky is 10 to the minus 17 torr. That would be a vacuum. We'd all be dead. The gas we breathe would vacate immediately. It would have never developed. We'd never have gas. We'd never have life. It's just nonsense. You need containment for gas pressure, and we're breathing it.
And you don't want to risk a dome breach depressurization situation.
Well, you wouldn't get too pressurised situation to have depressurisation. So you're saying you don't want to get to the point like in Alien, where they're out in the Narnia land known as space, and they open the airlock. Well, obviously on the Nostromo, whatever they call it, the big spaceship, it's fully pressurised. And at the point that you open the airlock, the gas that would have typically hit the airlock and then bounced back in to retain the pressure doesn't hit the airlock and has empty space to vacate into. But in order for that scenario to take place, i.e. rapid decompression, you've got to have compression first. Well, Earth, in the heliocentric model, has no containment whatsoever to develop the gas pressure they claim we have. And then they've got the gall to show you a totally fake painting of Earth from space with a black area 10 to the minus 17 surrounding clouds that are just chilling out on top of a ball. They ain't going nowhere. Why? Well, no reason. They're just defying the second law of thermodynamics, not filling space, not falling in line with entropy.
Right. So they just deny these natural laws, and some people might even usher that, yeah, the second law of thermodynamics doesn't apply to the Earth.
Doesn't apply to the globe Earth model.
That would be more technically correct, yeah.
Well, that would be factually accurate because literally it doesn't apply. The second law of thermodynamics, that would be the natural law governing entropy or decay. That law doesn't apply to the Earth in space if you believe you're on a sphere, because the gas is not filling the space.
Is it my understanding still that the heliocentric model still says it's gravity that is holding it down?
What's gravity?
Well, yeah, we know that we can't define it, but that's what they're using. Isn't that their rebuttal to it?
No.
It's the bending of space-time that keeps the gas in.
You've got an
Somehow.
out-of-date 107-year, nearly 108-year, coming up for out-of-date rhetoric that's still to this day taught in schools to give children the illusion that there is a actual force. Now, at no point do they say, that's what's holding the gas here when you see Earth from space in Narnia with the gas not filling the space. It's because of the gravity that we taught you in school, where it's a force. But as soon as you reach university level, they'll make it explicitly clear, as Craig found out from George Musa, that gravity is not a force. It's, as someone described from the Discord panel earlier, the bending of a conceptual medium. Pseudo-Riemannian force space, time, bending, as a result of the uneven distribution of mass. That's Einstein's gravity. Well, conceptual mediums, four-dimensional space-time, isn't something we experience. It's a conceptual medium, and the geometry thereof, pseudo-Riemannian force space, is what is described to bend when described in the maths. That's not physical reality. That's a conceptual medium being described as a result of the musings of Einstein. Nothing that is actual physical, nothing that is actually happening. It isn't even being described by Einstein as a force. It's not a force. So no, it's definitely not holding the gas here. To put it more succinctly, as Arwin already stated, the second law of thermodynamics does not apply to the heliocentric system. It's violated in more than one instance in terms of both the first and second law. The entire origin story of the heliocentric model is a first law of thermodynamics violation. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, but at the beginning of time we divided by zero and got everything in known existence, aka the Big Bang. That's a first law of thermodynamics violation. I think that's it. Did we do all the housekeeping questions? Any evidence of the R value,
question.
Earth, radius?
Can I ask a follow-up question, right?
About gas pressure?
If heliocentrists truly believe that the second law of thermodynamics doesn't apply, right, to what they believe is the real world, how do they actually address it? Do they actually technically address it separately? Like, okay,
I just answered this.
but what is the
25
second
seconds.
law?
Did
No,
nobody
but
listen?
not how they don't apply it to the model,
They don't.
but in their
I
minds.
just explained this like 2 minutes ago. This is something that Anthony's very passionate about. No, they do not explain it, and no, they do not claim that there's a force holding gas here. Quite the contrary if you ask a heliocentric priest such as George Musa. This is deja vu, or what? I literally just said this. But however, they do teach children that gravity is a force when very young. They teach them 107-year out-of-date rhetoric and never actually make the connection. Ergo, you have anti-flat Earth rhetoric that might state that the gas is held here by a force of gravity. They would be incorrect.
Right, but I'm just wondering that based on their model beliefs, do they actually think about it separately and like go back in history when second law of when gas pressure expansion was conceptualized and argued upon with entropy? Like, do they just say like, no, they were wrong? Do they even do that, or they just not talk about that subject ever?
Okay, what they say, and this requires a force, is that the gas go down, go boom boom. The displacement of any helium balloon I were to let go, the assertion would follow that the only reason it was displaced upwards is because gravity, which is not a force, pulls the gas down around the balloon. Ergo, you have homogeneous layers of gas that are described as ever-increasing spheres that they would describe going up in altitude. Now, those ever-increasingly wide and more vast spheres, violating the first law with their claim of trajectories of items that leave a non-inertial turning reference frame retaining their velocity as they increase their altitude, therefore violating the first law as they increase velocity with the ground going at a slower rate than they're going as they increase their height. Nevertheless, as you go up, you've got layers of gas, each pressing down on the one below. Ergo, gas go down, go boom boom. Meanwhile, gas is created at ground level, and because of a law of nature known as entropy, gas disperses into whatever volume it's got to disperse into. Dispersion is entropy. Well, that dispersion we
Right.
experience every time we see anything creating any gas. The oxygen we breathe is created by the vegetation down at ground level and does still make its way up to the top of Everest. Gets less because it's diffusing into the air. That's what entropy is. But they deny it and say, no, gas comes from the clouds and falls down like rain, pushing the other stuff up. You're like, no, it doesn't. Gas is not created in the air, and it's not being pulled down, go boom, boom, 9.8 meters per second. It's expanding in all directions to fill whatever volume it's got. That's how a gas behaves.
Right, but so they literally deny it, but they don't really address it and then just create a bypassing structure based on the columns of gas and everything. But that's not literally addressing gas pressure expansion effect at all.
No, you've already
Because
covered
that
this.
would
We're back at
still
the
apply
beginning.
in
You
that
already said
model.
it. Second law of thermodynamics does not apply to, quote, the Earth, right? Well, that's Rumpus basically declaring that Earth, when he considers it a heliocentric version of the Earth, doesn't have the second law of thermodynamics applicable to it. Why? Well, because it can't. Because we'd all be dead in the model. Because gas would fill the space. Instead, a non-force force that you can think of as force but isn't really a force is bending a conceptual medium known as space-time, causing inhomogeneous layers to become homogeneous and anisotropic gases to become isotropic. And therefore you have layers of gas pushing down, go boom boom, with 9.8 meters per second force applied to them. That's what they say. Now, that's not true in the actual rhetoric, but it's never covered in the actual... You find me a piece of actual heliocentric rhetoric that says gas go down, go boom boom, beyond some clown like Thunderfoot declaring it. You won't. I assure you. Anthony would have found it already.
Well, it is sometimes described in science fiction. It's like, oh, the gravity is pulling in the gas. They do say that, right?
Hold on.
But
Hold
it's
on, we've got
never
Brian
really
Rumpson
detailed
you
how that
arming.
works.
Hold on. Brian, did you want to get a word in, or did you just come off mute for the fun of it? Brian, can you hear us?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Did you have something to add? Did you have something you wanted to add, Brian?
No, mate. Sorry. Somebody unmuted me, and I was talking to my son.
Okay, can you pop yourself back on mute? It was me, just making sure everyone in the panel could actually add their 2 pennyworth if they chose to. But yeah, if you can locally.
Right. I wanted to make one. I
Go ahead,
wanted to
Armin,
make
sorry.
one last remark about it, and then I'll let you move on with housekeeping.
We've
But
done with housekeeping.
If
Go
they
on.
say second law of thermodynamics is claimed not to apply to the Earth, then what's the origin of it? Because haven't all natural laws been established on Earth? That's when they were established. Not, oh, look, we can go to space now. Oh, look, oh, the second law of thermodynamics doesn't apply to it, right? That makes no sense. So it's like paradoxical. Second law of thermodynamics becomes paradoxical because how could a natural law like that have been established on Earth when it doesn't apply to the Earth?
It wouldn't be a law anymore. You're right. Basically, if space was true, we wouldn't have that natural law because it wouldn't be applicable. It wouldn't be a law. It wouldn't be occurring always. It would be defied by space. Now, their argument in rebuttal is to beg the question and go, well, obviously we've got space, and obviously it is defying the second law of thermodynamics because there it is. Look, I look at the sky and just decide that it is a vacuum, even though I've not been there, and even though the pictures from it are absolutely ludicrous, and even though the pictures are actually violating the second law of thermodynamics that we do experience daily. But I'm still going to just say, well, that doesn't apply to my model that I've never seen and priests have lied to me about since birth.
Right.
That concludes the housekeeping. Unless I had any answer for the R value question we asked at the end. Did anybody want to have a bash at R and where it comes from?
You're going to need a flat plane for that.
You are going to need a flat plane for that. Just out of interest from the chat, when we started off the show, did anybody notice that there was a chainsaw going on out my window? I just want to check if I made the right mic choice, because it rejects noise from that direction. So if you didn't hear the chainsaw, let me know in the chat. Sound all good. Whereas if no, I definitely could hear the chainsaw during your intro and first housekeeping questions. I'd be intrigued to know, because I can't go back and actually monitor it while I'm doing the show for obvious reasons.
Yeah, when you did
Go on.
When you did the intro, you could hear a little bit of something going on in the background.
A little bit of something, but it wasn't like, oh wow, that's really distracting.
No, it definitely wasn't distracting, but you could hear it.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good enough, as long as it hasn't, because to me it was so loud I could hardly hear myself think, which is good. But, my ear's pointing that direction and the mic's pointing towards me, and the rejecting little fins in the side of the mic are pointing towards where I want it to reject noise. The only bit that leaks in is through the window, i.e. the frame, because it's triple glazed. But you can still hear a chainsaw when it's 3, 4, 5 feet away, or wherever it is. The guy was doing the bush that's right outside my window, the gardener. Anyway, quick shout out to Professor Phil Bell, who sent me a donation via PayPal. Thank you very much, Phil. Really appreciate it. You're only, I think, the second person to have done that, outside of what I may or may have not been GoFundMe contributors that were jokingly set as being people that were against us. I don't know if they were actually the people that donated in that instance. I think it was someone else that just wanted to go by an alias of an anti-flat earther for the joke of it. But in this regard, you're only the second person that I know of, for certain, to have done that. The first was Wolfie, after we pointed out that he shouldn't be correcting for not actual deflection in his plane. If you're watching his plane from a roundabout, you'll experience Coriolis drift, the plane seeming to corkscrew as you turn on the roundabout. But obviously the plane wouldn't correct for that not actual deflection you saw from a roundabout. Wolfie seemed to think he had to, and then he gave me a donation. Well, I don't know why Prof. Phil Bell did. He just said, "Had a coffee on me." And in many ways, it's more commendable because there was no Discord chatter going on. There was no trolling from Phil. There was just chit-chat going on in my 24-hour marathon that I did on Sunday. And for no reason other than he said, "Go and have a coffee on me." In other words, just completely out of the goodness of his heart, he just gave me money. And I was like, that's noteworthy. So much so that I'm now making a note of it on a live show. So the fact that he took his non-disdain, you've done well in an argument against me as I perceived Wolfie to have been. He just wanted to show thanks for being entertained. And you're like, oh, well, that's really, really nice of you, Phil. Thank you. It took me by surprise. Hence the live shout out for it. There we go. Something shocking happens every so often here on the Flat Earth Debate.
Maybe that's like a touche,
No, I don't think so. I think he's probably just paid attention to the fact that I'm not in any way shy about saying I'm poor. I do need the money. I have to e-beg. This show isn't large enough to sustain me just by YouTubing. So I'm used to it after 5 years or whatever it's been. I have to e-beg. And at some point, he's probably turned around, as he said, I'll take him at his word, that no, thank you for the entertainment. Have a coffee on me. And I will. I'll buy a big, massive coffee bag. A bag of coffee beans with that 10 quid. Thank you very much indeed. I have actually run out of coffee and I am actually broke. So thank you. I did actually genuinely appreciate it. It's why I can keep yabbering along, because I've had that coffee that you've paid for in advance. That's not true. I have actually got to go and buy a bag of coffee. Anyway, that was about it. I think there was something else I wanted to mention. I just can't remember what. It'll come back to me. Any updates from you guys? Anything exciting happening? Looking at
I'm
YouTube.
back on YouTube. Woohoo!
Were you
The
banned for a bit?
Rangers won.
No, don't talk about sport. You're back. I didn't. Maybe that slipped me by. Were you banned for a certain amount of time then? Could you not live stream?
Yeah, a week.
A week?
I was.
Tell me after.
I got struck for bullying. I was a mean flat earther.
Who are you bullying?
I don't know. Didn't say.
Okay. Fair enough.
It's just bullying and no further explanation.
Very interesting. Bullying. I haven't watched your show for a little while, I've got to be honest. Oh, 100 people almost watching. How far are we into the show? Just under half an hour. That's about normal. But brilliant. Glad there's 100 people watching on form. Unlike the last show where the numbers went absolutely bonkers for no reason. YouTube did correct that in the end. So it was corrected down to the amount that I suggested it would be, which was typical viewing numbers, plus a little bit. And when I was pointing out that the plus a little bit in the chat consistency, that's probably because anybody who did see it advertised to them went, whoa, that's high viewing numbers. I wonder what's going on there, and clicked on it where they may not have before. That would have increased the viewing slightly, which was in line with how the chat was going. But yeah, sure enough, the likes remained at something like 3,000, something stupid, 2,500. In other words, completely wrong. But the views just went back to, as I anticipated, back to what they should have been, which I'm pleased about because I don't want distorted figures. So occasionally some of the chat trolls will come along, oh yeah, buying views. No, Actually, on the contrary, I don't want my views distorting. But from what I do understand, having researched it several times back in the day when people used to actually do that, fellow flat earthers as well used to, bolster their own views. We won't get too much into that. I looked at it, and a few people showed me how it was done, because they were trying to convince me of other people bolstering their views, and they wanted to show me how they thought they were doing it. Anywho, one of the things that I found out was that when they are viewbotting, when a certain channel, let's say I'm viewbotting my channel, what will happen is the company that's paid to do it, so that they don't get caught, will try and viewbot other surrounding channels at similar times, and also subscribe to them and various other things, give them likes, so that YouTube don't catch them. I.e., if it's just one account that's purely set up to view a certain channel with 100 people in an office all doing it at once, then it immediately flags the algorithmic methods to come into play and go, no, that doesn't look right. Whereas if they do it to other channels at a similar time, it's less likely to get caught. So what I suspect happened is somebody's probably view botting, but so they don't get caught, they're also subscribed to me, and therefore on that particular occasion it spills over on my channel to legitimize the people who are doing it. That's the only reasoning based on my research 3, 4, however long years ago, could be attributable to that sort of thing happening. But in terms of me wanting to do it, on the contrary, I definitely do not want that sort of thing happening on my channel, because I follow my stats, and I need to know if I'm doing well or not, and I can react to it. In other words, not that the 24-hour on Sunday thing was actually a reaction to a drop in views or anything. I just want to know what time is the most effective to put a new time slot out. I've tried several and I can't make up my mind which one to use. So I thought, sod it, I'll just put a whole bunch of shows out back to back, and then afterwards go back and look at the stats. Well, obviously, if there's a distortion to those stats for whatever reason, they become useless to me, and I can't analyse the data and go, where's the most useful place to put this in terms of a time slot? And while that came up in the chat while I was watching the show yesterday, during the 24-hour marathon, and one of the chatters actually pointed that out to me, or alluded to it, and they were like, are you picking it, I can't remember how the question was phrased, but what are you looking for in regards to the view figures, based on the fact that, I'm only viewing it live, and would anybody else, or do you all, that was how it started, do you all only come when there's a chat here? And I immediately knew the stats, and I was like, no, 80% of the people don't come when there's a live stream going or a premiering stream going. They watch afterwards. Now, I know that from my stats, but what I'm looking to achieve with the extra time slot, which will probably end up being in the middle of the night for me, it seems, which I was kind of, you're looking at it going, 4 to 6 a.m., I'm definitely not going to be able to monitor that, am I? I mean, that's where I hope to get some sleep, when my kids aren't waking me up. But that was just what the stats initially showed me. I was like, this isn't padding out for it being a show that I can monitor then. But there we go. That's why I've done it, to figure that out. But I want the show to have good stats in terms of how many people are watching concurrently at the same time, so that I can see it. Whereas sort of 2 or 3 days after they've been broadcast, I can only see how many consecutive views they've had, rather than how many actually watched during the show. And for reasons of making it look more popular, as I described earlier with viewbotting, I want a genuine audience of as large a numbers as possible when it first gets a premiering stream at whatever time it may be. So because it's going to become a consistent time slot, I'm hoping that people will, come back again and again and again as it becomes a regular thing to them. And obviously I'm going to pick the time that's going to give the best numbers when people are all watching it once when it first comes out. Hence, that's why it's important, the actual time. If I was just looking at how many overall, it wouldn't really matter what time it came out. But given the fact that I will have 3 show time slots a day spread out throughout the day, it's quite important that they don't overlap and end up oversaturating each other, or whatever the words are. There you go. There's my babble about the purposes behind doing that 24-hour not live stream, but 24-hour marathon, and indeed the stats from that weird show that we had a few days back, last week or whatever it was, because it was weird, and I do find those things fascinating. It also amuses me when people assume that I'm doing it to bolster my views. It's like, no, if I consistently get, at the worst case scenario, about 60,000 views over a 28-day period, If I'm doing badly, typically it's about 80,000. If I'm doing well, it's 100,000. If I'm doing exceptionally well, it'll be over 100,000 views in a 28-day cycle. So, you know, you can work out yourself the mean average what that should be. And I can see where it is. You know, if it drops below 80, I go, well, I better do a bit more editing and, you know, chunk out some videos that will increase that number. Because I know that I'll get axed the moment my stats slide. And it's the people who don't watch their stats that when they start to slide, they carry on as though nothing's happening. And before you know it, everyone's forgotten who they are. Well, I definitely don't want that to happen, especially when we're in a community and a topic that's considered fringe by YouTube. So, you know, they're doing as little as they possibly can to promote me as it is. So I've got to really keep on top of this stuff. Anyway, enough talk about stats. Fascinating flat earth topic this is. Although it is related, isn't it? We're under the kibosh. You know, we're not wanted here, technically speaking. We can't be overtly censored. And we've ended up being quote-unquote fringe. So it is definitely related. I will waffle on about it. Why not? It started with you, Arwin, saying that you'd been banned for bullying, by the way. Yes, that is right.
Obi-Wan Kenobi this Thursday.
Obi-Wan Kenobi, a new movie's coming out from Star Wars, Disney.
6 parts. I heard it's epic. Darth Vader scenes. We'll see.
Well, fair enough. Shout out to Mike808 for hitting the super chat. It says to get back on track with housekeeping. We actually did do housekeeping, so this isn't like we've lost track of what's going on, Mike. I promise. We have actually covered all the housekeeping questions today. But yeah, thank you very much indeed for the super chat. I really do appreciate the support. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, Phil B seems to think that what's that housekeeping question? Any viable hypothesis for any of the 3 fields or 4? He seems to think that's science.
A viable hypothesis is the formulation of a naturally occurring phenomena and the assumed, yet to be validated cause of that effect with a null. That's all we're asking for. We're not actually asking for it to be validated. We're not asking for the actualization of that hypothesis. Just a valid hypothesis. That's all we're asking for. I mean, just, you know, if he thinks there is some, just chuck it in the chat. You know, if A then B, and if A not B.
I think they're confused about science, the scientific method.
Well,
they say it's too narrow.
It is narrow. Empiricism doesn't come cheap. What it offers is a logical methodology that doesn't allow you to violate the cause once you've established it. Let me explain. If A, then B, which would be to say, I do A and cause B to happen. Now, in a hypothesis, you've also got, if A, I vary this thing, and B does not happen. So that's called a null. Well, when you go through the process of actually varying A, you can't, when you vary A, both cause B to happen and simultaneously not cause B to happen. Either A being varied will cause B, or A being varied will not cause B. You can't have both. Therefore, when you vary A, one or other of those predictions, scientific predictions, will be proven. You vary A and it causes B. Okay? Therefore, your prediction in the null, if A then B, is proven. Now, if on the other hand you vary A and it does not cause B, then that part of the prediction, if A not B, is proven. So, because of the structure of the scientific method, what it offers at the end of actualization of a hypothesis is empirical proof. That don't come cheap. Yes, it is hyper-specific. Yes, it is narrow. Yes, it is limited. Well, that's natural science, whether you like it or not.
Wouldn't you want it to be all those things? Just to make sure you know what you're talking about and to be able to relay the actual truth to other people?
It's not even in terms of empiricism. You can call it truth, but it's just matter of fact at that point. It is proven.
Yeah, so I don't get why they wouldn't want it to be narrow. Why is that a bad thing to them?
Oh,
Is it-
right, I see why you question this.
Pseudoscientists.
Because they need it to be broad. They need you to understand that when science is declared that it means proven, but also nice and broad so that it can include just so stories about planets and solar systems and Big Bang and all that sort of stuff. That's why they want it to be broad. What's this?
And then when their models fail, they can also pivot on a dime and change it completely. It's like, oh, science is supposed to evolve, right?
Refracted and geometric are not mutually exclusive. Okay. Geometric means earth measure. If it's refracted ipso facto, it can't be geometric. They are most definitely mutually exclusive, Phil. What are you babbling about?
Yes, Phil B at it again. Just like usual. In your chat yesterday on your marathon stream, which was very amusing, by the way, he was eventually just saying this. It's just not a mistake. Like, I inquired after, and he just, like, confirmed, no, it's can be both. Like, how?
We only have one horizon, and the horizon in the begging the question, proof of nothing, perspective hijacking, Earth curve calculator is geometric. It has a straight line to it. It's a tangent point calculable in the maths. That's Earth curve. Now, if the horizon is refracted, it is not geometric.
That's what I thought. He's in chat, by the way, right now. So, hey, Phil B, remember when you said this yesterday? Remember? What do you got to say for yourself?
Hey, check it out. It's me as Yoda. Refraction? Geometry, it is not. Yeah, well said, Yoda Nathan.
Timing.
That's funny. He was talking about paint that he's working on that's going to be all over the place in 10 years. This guy's lost. You don't know what science is.
Be here or be sphere for ballbusters, as that's what we're covering at the moment. So happy days for anybody who wants to know.
We nicknamed him Secret Science Man because he said there's things that he can't discuss. He wishes he can.
Who's this? Yoda?
Phil B.
Is there anything else been going on over the weekend? Don't typically like to make a note of what day it is, but why not?
No, that 24-hour thing was great. You could pop in any time and get in, and Phil B was entertaining, I must say. I should send him a super chat.
The one downside about it, though, the system you got it set up, the way you got it set up, was that you constantly had to switch chats. That was kind of annoying. But other than that, it was awesome.
I don't follow. Switch chats? What,
Yeah.
What?
Well, you'd have to go to a new stream. I thought it was going to be a singular stream, so you could just stay in the chat constantly. But you had to actually switch to, like, you throw out the link for the new thing that's going to follow it up, and then you have to go there. Because the old chat's just going to die out. That happened with every stream change. So.
Oh, yeah, that's how I wanted it to be. As I explained earlier, I wanted to know what time slot would do well statistically speaking. So, yeah, I wanted it to be in, separate shows with separate stats. So I could look at it in that way. I'm just going to do a couple of quick shout-outs. Shout out to Godzilla37. Then I said, quote, But no one will laugh if chocolate is not there to hear my super chat, end quote. She replied, don't worry, Nathan won't read it anyways, end quote. And she pressed, quote, buy and send, end quote. That's brilliant that you're narrating your life via super chats for me, Godzilla. Thank you very much indeed for the support. I really do appreciate it. Also, shout out to Fibre Oats, who says, I don't think many people in general know what the scientific method is. No, I totally agree. Don't stop people making claims. Saturday's Ball Busted humbled me properly. Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm plugging it. I thought it was a good show too. I think QE's on fire at the moment because he's on a little bit of time off, which tends to mean he's razor sharp and wants to get through his presentations. I attempted to ruin that 3 or 4 times and he wouldn't allow it to happen. So yeah, it's definitely on fine form. Thank you for the super chat, by the way.
that was
Huey
not
gets a
very-
proper break. He gets less aggro and more on task, and that's good.
Well, it's needed listening to half the stuff that's going on. So I think it's well timed.
I disagree. It's needed to address it, but to get aggro isn't effectively addressed. It's just expressing how annoyed you are with it. That doesn't actually help you in the argument.
I'm talking about the scientific method in Ball Busters, not his anger.
Oh, okay. All right, I agree.
Also, there was a fundy chastisement. Is that the right word? Chastisement? To chastise?
Yes.
I think I've got that
What was
word
his
right.
name?
I don't know what his name was. It doesn't matter. I forget these people pretty much immediately after I've spoken to them. But he was claiming that QE was disseminating the information to his audience at a 9th grade level, I believe. And then after a couple of questions by QE, it was pretty apparent that the guy didn't understand science at a 5th grade level. To critique QE on his dissemination of the information, which is really an outrage. But we find that here in this subject. Now, I'm sure there's people out there that go, no. I debated in the field of tennis. And the same thing happens over there when you're talking about X, Y, and Z. They'll still do the same thing. You'll get some stupid chat skank idiot come along, tell you that you don't know a thing about tennis. It's the first thing that popped into my head because my kids are at a tennis lesson. But yeah, I'm sure there's going to be people out there who will example this happening through all walks of life, because every time I think that something's hyper-specific and capable of being stereotyped into our little niche community, you find out, no, it happens in all walks of life. People are people. It happens all the time.
Nathan, I wanted to tell you, that was great, that comparison you put together with the mechanic working on the car. That was really good.
Oh, right, because I said it would be like somebody coming along to a mechanic while he's got the hood of the car up, turning a wrench on something, and you go, you don't seem to be holding that flangle doogle, whatever you call it, very well. I'm sure you're doing it wrong. And the mechanic looks up and goes, what am I working on? What's the thing my flangle doogle's actually touching? And the guy goes, I don't know. And the mechanic says, well, the thing I'm touching with the flangle doogle, that would be a spanner, is called an alternator. And the guy says, yeah, you're definitely doing it wrong, but you don't know what an alternator is, you don't know what a spanner is. You're telling me I'm doing it wrong. What? That was the scenario.
Yeah, but you're doing it every day. I need to study. Give me 20 years. All right.
That was his excuse, wasn't it? Yeah, that was his excuse. Well, obviously, you're going to know more about this than I am when it comes to science and detailing how a hypothesis is formed. You do it all day, every day. Doesn't, implying, doesn't mean I can't come along without having the slightest clue about what I'm talking about or what you're talking about and tell you that you're doing it wrong because you're a flat earther. And I'm not. So that doesn't mean I can't. You being a flat earther and knowing much more about this subject than me isn't any call for me not to criticise you about what you're talking about when I don't know anything about it. Obviously, I'm still allowed to do that. And the reason is because you're just doing it every day while I haven't got a clue. But I'm still perfectly in my rights to tell you how stupid you are. That's the mentality people take with us. Maybe it happens in tennis also.
It eventually comes down to pride, because what you're doing is exposing the misuse of science, proving it as pseudoscience. They don't want to look like, hey, for the last so many years, I've accepted it as fact, and now you've proven me wrong and how stupid I am. They don't want to go there. So they come up with all these excuses. So then when you read them the narrow definition of the scientific method, they love the idea that the minute you mention science, most people think a proven thing. But then pseudoscience uses that feeling or concept that people get, that the minute you put science behind anything, a proven thing, and then they go misuse it to sell their BS. And that's what the globe lie is. The globe lie is BS. They use words like science. And then when you say, okay, what's your dependent variable? What's your independent variable? Did you have any control variables? What was your hypothesis? Well, we don't have any of that. Well, then you didn't do science. So then all this stuff's been pseudoscience. So they're pissed off that they've been lied to, but they're mad at you for exposing the lie.
Shout out to Sensual Goat, who says tennis is so upper class. Flat earth snob. That's true. I live in a very nice part of the world. Royal Leamington Spa. Royal. Very nice. But I'm poor, so I live in a very small apartment, with me justifying that position to my wife frequently. Yes, but look at the beautiful area. Look, you get to take the kids to tennis lessons. There's really nice support for homeschool here. We've got a lovely council. Look how nice our park is. Look how nice our cathedral is. Look how nice those fountains are. Isn't it nice here? And then she tells me we need a bigger house, which I can't afford. Smash the super chat if you want to have a bigger house. Thank you for the super chat, Central Go. I really appreciate it.
How come Phil B never comes in here?
Who?
Why don't you come on in, Phil, and tell us how funny Flat Earth is? Tell us about your gravimeter.
Gravimeter? He's measuring things go down, go boom, boom. Hello, Adam, by the way.
No, it actually measures. It measures the amount. Wait. Acceleration in specific areas like deposits of heavy metals. That's what it does. It measures gravity.
What's that?
How do I know?
You're telling me it measures the uneven distribution of mass causing the bending of space-time? No, you don't measure fourth-dimensional pseudo-space-time bending. That's a mathematical description. Conceptual only. What's he going to measure? It's a bit like Wolfie measuring drift and thinking he's got to counteract it.
To be exact, he says it's used to measure gravitational acceleration in specific areas like deposits of heavy minerals. There you go.
What about gas?
That don't count, I guess.
I guess it don't count. Major constituent part of the life that we lead is dependent on gas. Just ignore it, because it doesn't go down at 9.8 meters per second. Just ignore that. Just doesn't matter. Once water turns into gas, just forget it, just ignore it. It doesn't exist anymore. Can't see it, doesn't exist. When it comes back as rain, it's just magic. It's the sky cloud gods making it just appear. Water's not part of a cycle. Gas, forget it. Doesn't matter that it's going up. It's only going up because the other gas is going down. Oh, so you do remember the gas. You think it goes down, go boom, boom. Right? That being measured with your gravitometer. Gravometer.
Yeah, and his predictions. It's the same thing.
Adam must be engaged in drug deals.
Legal, that is.
I was going to sarcastically comment, you mean the bobbity droppity meter?
Bobbity droppity? No, he's not bobbity. That's not fair.
That was put to me by McToon as a proof of gravity. And we had a discussion and came to the conclusion that it was something that just measured how things drop. It wasn't actually measuring gravity at all. In fact, all it was doing was timing how a ball bearing fell. And, yeah,
Lovely parlour
that's
trick, though.
one of the
Nice parlour trick.
beautiful parlour tricks if you can conjure it up in your apparatus. And then ascribe the cause of it to something that you don't detect within the apparatus. It's well.
Lumpy gas in a vacuum asks a question, maybe 10th can answer. You there, 10th? Does baseline get a, I think he means an, integer value for sextant use? Question mark. Want me to read that
If you
again?
can say, I don't even know what integer is. Ask Adam that. That sounds like a math thing.
I'll read the question again. Does baseline get an integer value for sextant use? Question mark. Thank you for the super chat, Lumpy gas in a vacuum.
I've never read it in that term in the books I got, so maybe Adam could add to it since I think integer is a math thing.
Yes, it's definitely a math thing.
Yeah, well, I don't really understand the question.
I don't understand the question
is
either.
just a whole number.
Right,
I
sounds
can
like
declare
another
that
word
too.
for numerical value.
When a mathematician says they don't understand the question, I can also follow suit and say, without embarrassment, I didn't understand your question. There's no embarrassment to be had.
If you were going to assign it a value on the x-axis, it would be 0, wouldn't it? And in terms of your baseline, in relation to the y, you know, the altitude, the y-axis, the point where your baseline intersects the y-axis will be at y equals 0. If that's his point he's making, but I'm not sure.
I want to know the integer value for the density of ether.
An integer is just a number that isn't capable of being shown as 1 over something. Or am I right or wrong in that, Adam?
It's just a whole number, yeah. That's just a. It can be negative, positive, but it can't be like 1.5 or 3 over 2.
Well,
Or 875.
it's never shown up in any of my research as even. I mean, it's never mentioned in that context. So he needs to give a citation or something for us to look at.
I still didn't understand how it's.
I suppose the trick. I've just seen it here on Google. It's saying the question on Google asks, is 0 an integer value? So if maybe that's what he was applying. That if the baseline is 0, can you ascribe it as an integer? I would say yes, because 0 is still a whole. It's not a division. It's not a part of. It's just 0. It's a whole nothingness.
It's not just 0, though, is it? Your point can be called 0, but the line is 0 to 180, isn't it?
Well, no, I think he's referring to the graph here. Just the point. I don't know. Let's say the question's a little bit malformed for me to. I've got to interpret the question to answer it, if you know what I mean. So, but I would say yes. Is this the simple answer that? Yeah, our baseline's going to start at 0, isn't it? It's going to be 0 inches, 0 degrees. Once we apply it to the sextant, we're going to start using degrees as our unit. So I would say it's perfectly reasonable that you start at 0 on the bottom, and then that is an integer, it is a real number.
So to summarise, Lumpy gas in a vacuum, thank you again for the super chat. Does baseline get an integer value for sextant use? Yes. You heard it here first. Breaking news.
Big rebuttal for tomorrow.
I don't know why that's come up. Is there a reason behind that, do you think?
Well, I don't know why it's come up, but it's pretty obvious. You need a reference, and the reference is horizontal, and it's got to be 0. And they show it in all the books, and it's 0 to 90. You got to subtract from 90, your zenith. So the reference has to be a baseline. The baseline has to be a straight angle 180 or looked upon as 0 if it's in a 90. And you can't go away from that, whether it's the sensible horizon with a bubble section, it's your eye line, and the reference is a straight line from your eye, or if it's the surface of the earth, where it must be parallel to.
And with that, I'm going to say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So, a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, hit the thanks button, and all that good stuff. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on an after show. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!